own show prep. So, so he had no idea.
I just barely make it in.
I'm sure you can tell, but we don't show.
I mean, let's put the cards down on the table here.
Miami Hurricanes, yeah. You know the name already. It's Mercy, ha ha. It's a 6-Rig Kane show. Can't forget the name though. Got Jazz, Blue, Fishy, DJ break the game code. Ain't no changing them, ain't no breaking them. Real Portland live from the Hard Rock Stadium. Ball 14 for the orange and green. We see the 6-Rig champs. It's more than a dream. This is life on the field. Beyond 100 yards, a hurricane that's never still put a damage to your squad. The 6-Rig Kane show. The 6-Rig Kane show. The 6 Rings Kane show. You know.
What's wrong with us? Seriously.
What's wrong with us? We're Miami Hurricanes fans.
Welcome to the 6 Rings Kane Show, a show dedicated to Miami Hurricane sports, featuring the legendary Larry Bluestein, Jazz Santana, Vish, and Danny Gillette. Let's go Canes.
What's going on, wow. Just screwed that all up. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Sixers Cage Show, joined by Danny Gillette. Danny, how's it going?
It's going good. I was going to say that intro is a little bit misleading because we only have about 50% of the crew here, but that is all right.
Hey, the show must go on, so it will. And after I fumble the intro there, you know what I could use? You Break Will Fix. You Break Will Fix is one of the presenting sponsors of 6 Rings Canes. If you're ever driving around and you feel a wobble or your tires losing air, it might be your wheels. So check out You Break Will Fix. It's Miami's premier wheel repair and restoration company. Has over 20 years of experience. It's located in North Miami. They do quick repairs. They'll fix your wheel. They do everything in-house. So they don't have to send out for anything. But if it runs longer than that, they will get you a loaner car for free. And if they're looking weathered, your wheels, you're like, I could use a spruce up there. You don't need to buy new ones. They'll refresh them. They'll look good as new. They do powder coating, machining, again, all in a house. So contact Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 and follow them on our socials at You Break Will Fix. And if you go in there and you mention 5 reasons, you will get 5.5% off your repair. That's You Break Wheel Fix powder coating and wheel repair, 305-748-0112, located at 1848 Northeast 143rd Street in North Miami, Florida. All right, DJ. So as you mentioned, we're going it alone here. We got Pimp Down in the chat though. So
what's up, Pimp Down? How you doing?
We got some of our OG listeners. So they'll help lift us up here. Blue is on the old school terrestrial radio tonight, and Jazz was unable to make it. So you're stuck with DJ and I. So we're gonna talk about
lucky you guys.
Yeah. Well. We'll see. Based on the way I introed the show, it's gonna be a long night. Or maybe not. So we do have we're going to talk a little bit about the DB coach the Canes hired. And then we're going to talk, 10 Canes were invited to the combine. We're going to talk about that and then do a recruiting check-in as well as that never stops. And actually segue there to Zac Etheridge. So he is the defensive backs coach. DJ, what are your initial thoughts on him? He was at Houston before.
Another Houston connection in some form or fashion. I really like the hire because he's from Alabama and his alma mater is Auburn, so he knows the southeast area of the country pretty well, and that could definitely help in terms of recruiting. I think when you look at his resume, coming from Houston, he is a very accomplished coach in addition to what he brought to the table at Houston. He coached safeties for Auburn. He was a graduate assistant for Penn State. That was his first job. He was a defensive backs coach for Louisville. Also the defensive backs coach for Houston.
Yeah, he did a little boomerang there.
Yeah, so he does have experience at multiple levels in multiple conferences, which I think is important. And, I think this is a great hire because when you look at, his resume as a player, he was a starter for Auburn and a team captain of the 2010 championship team, which makes me feel really old because that team feels like it just was a team yesterday.
You're not allowed to say that on this show, DJ, so just so you're aware.
But no, I really like the hire. I think when you look at what he can bring to the table, he has the ability to coach physical defensive backs, He has the ability to elevate the secondary. And when you look at the defense coordinator and Tim Hefferman, as well as the players that they've brought in via the transfer portal, particularly in the secondary, I think this is a good fit. It's not too often that you see a complete remake of a secondary unit in one offseason. But I think that Miami's done a really good job of doing that. And I also think they've done a good job of cohesiveness within the defensive backs unit, from a coach that is used to playing a physical style of defense in Heffernan to physical, defensive back commits to now bringing in a guy like Etheridge. There's a cohesiveness on the unit that wasn't there last year. And so I think this is another great pickup for Miami, and it fits really well with what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I generally agree. I'm curious where this came from. I was surprised. I wasn't that familiar with Etheridge, obviously. After he was named, we all looked into him pretty heavily. But yeah, I didn't really see a connection back to Miami. Usually that's how these things are done, or back to the new defensive coordinator. So it's kind of like, I guess there's some behind the scenes networking happening there. It's a little bit of an interesting hire. As you said, his career, frankly, kind of stalled out a little bit lately, right? Because he was at Houston, then he went to Auburn. They took the same position at Houston again after that. So it's a little bit of a circular move there. I agree with you on style and fit. He likes to play as DB's physical, which fits what we're trying to do here from a recruiting standpoint, and the defensive coordinator as well. That's his style. And he's got an additional title here. He's also the defensive passing game coordinator. So I think this is an opportunity for him to be a little bit maybe more involved in some game planning in that sense.
Lord knows we need one, so there you go.
Well, that's now we still. Look, the only coach that stayed was Jason Taylor. Everyone else got sent away. So
I'm wondering. You mentioned you wonder where the connection is. I'm wondering if there's a Houston connection that we don't know about, because you look at Brown.
Yeah, but if you look at the years there, it would have been in Dawson's first stint overlapping there, and that would have been several years ago. I just think he's got a little bit of an interesting career that he went. Now, he did go to Auburn to be the safeties coach, so it was kind of like a better school but downgrade position wise for Houston, which a lot of coaches do. That makes sense. Yeah. I'm curious why he went back to Houston for a year there before landing at Miami. But like you said, it seems like a good hire. I'm hoping that you hire a defensive coordinator. He's making these hires to fit what he's trying to do.
Brian Hartson was fired at Auburn. That's why he went back to Houston.
Okay, that adds up. I forgot that he was there.
Hartson was fired for Hugh Freeze, for those who don't remember. And so a lot of times you'll see coaches, they got nowhere to go once their main head coach gets fired, so they go back.
But I thought Hartson was fired 2 years ago.
So he returned in 2022. Wait, I got that wrong. My bad. But he returned in 2021. In 2022, it was announced that he would remain on the staff. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but then you get a new a coach in there, and maybe after it's not hard to understand a year with Hugh Freeze is enough to make you look for an exit. So that could have been it as well, right? He didn't sign up to work for Hugh Freeze. It is his alma mater, so he might have agreed to stick around. And then after a year, they decided that wasn't where he wanted to be anymore. So yeah, I like the hire. I mean, you know a lot more about this than I do, DJ. But Hurdy's a good recruiter, which is never a bad thing. But yeah, I think based on what we saw defensively last year, we're all hoping that can shore up the secondary. There is, and we've talked about this pretty extensively, and the Canes attacked this in the portal, right? There is it's a deep defensive backfield now, so he's got weapons to deploy there.
And I also think it says something when he began his career with 2012 Penn State, because Penn State was hit hard by sanctions, and yet they still managed to make something out of that season. So I think, it says a lot too, even if he's just a graduate assistant, about how that program was able to still function, quite frankly, and having that experience, that unique experience being on that, Penn State team and part of that program during that time. So I think that definitely counts for something, because that was one of the most unique and kind of monumental event of college football, and that program at the time was severely shorthanded.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So he was likely carrying a larger load than a typical first-time assistant like that. So again, Zac Etheridge is the new defensive backs coach. We're still looking for a linebackers coach, as far as I know, and I wouldn't be surprised there's another defensive coach hired as well, because there is room, because there were 2 defensive line coaches. Now it's just Jason Taylor, and so there is room to bring in someone to replace Nicholson, as well as another coach somewhere. So we'll see. Still need a linebackers coach for sure, though.
Yeah, and pay attention to a lot of contracts ended at the end of January, just speaking around college football. And so one could happen soon. You never know. Sometimes things are being worked out behind the scenes, and, you got to wait until the contract officially ends. So I'm not saying we are going to see one, but there is a possibility that we could see one within the next couple days or next week or so. It's all about ironing out the details and making sure that, a coach's contract ends with the program before, they can officially, sign the dotted line on another one.
True. And I am aware that Heffernan, coached. He was the linebackers coach as well at Minnesota, but I mean, we'd be pretty threadbare if he double dips there, and we only have one defensive line. We'd have three defensive assistants right now. So I expect someone to be hired into that position, as well as maybe another defensive coach, because right now we only have the 3. It's Jason Taylor, Heffernan, and now Zac Etheridge. So I expect 2 more to be added to that staff somewhere.
Maybe 3 is all we need.
I mean, three might be. I mean, look, Jason Taylor is a continuity person, so I don't think he's blameless for last year's debacle either. So we've added two and had 3 leave so far. 1 fired, the other 2 were I think voluntold to leave. So there's still gaps to be filled. We'll obviously cover that as it happens. I don't think anyone saw. I think if we had said list out 5 coaches, for defensive backs coach, I don't think Zac Etheridge would have been on there. No. So we prepare to be surprised. But that's why it's good to have, Mario's coached at a lot of schools. He's got a pretty deep network of connections to kind of reach through and identify guys. So that's where that is really useful. I know we've done a lot of hire people that know what it's like to be at Miami and kind of do that stuff, and that. That's good in a way, but that he went to Alabama, went to Oregon, he's kind of spread all over the country at this point. Then coming back does allow him to kind of reach a deep pool of candidates. So I expect the kind of rest of this to be filled in pretty soon.
Absolutely. And, I think, in my opinion, just in terms from a coaching staff standpoint, we are better off than we were a year ago. Just from a coaching staff standpoint, talent standpoint.
I think. Oh God. I mean, yes, but I think it's a lot of 2020 hindsight. I mean, it was the defensive performance was so bad that I mean, I would rather just have the players coach themselves than whatever the hell that was last year. So,
because I remember last year we were thinking, oh, okay, this is a pretty solid, defensive group, and everything will be good. And once it started, it became very clear that some holes were there.
Yeah, and it's again, like Guidry obviously came over from Marshall, and as much, and we'll talk a little bit about the future of the ACC. Spend a couple minutes on that, but as much as people like to make fun of it and all that, this is high level football.
Yeah,
a lot of really good coaches, they get a year of his defense on tape, and they really dig into how to exploit it. And and you could see it once that was unlocked, really by Virginia Tech. Everyone knew where and how to attack, and we saw it didn't matter what the opponent was. Similar game plans. Misdirection runnings because we don't gap fill, a lot of motion because we couldn't keep up with it, knowing how to isolate our man coverage to get mismatches. Like we saw that over and over again.
Just running straight up the middle with Hayes King. That worked too. I mean,
yeah, exactly. So I mean, so they kind of learned how to exploit our defense, and then once that book was out, everyone repeated it. Yeah, well, so we'll see how this new staff comes together. But yeah, last year was painful, so it's hard to imagine it being not better. So
there was a lot of optimism heading into last year, and there's going to be a lot of optimism, I think, heading into this year. But
I think the optimism will grow as we see if Carson Beck starts throwing in practice and stuff. Because I think until then, he's supposed to be ahead of schedule. He's not going to participate in spring, obviously, but if we say okay, he's working with receivers, he's actually throwing. I think people, because right now behind him. So I don't think there's optimism until everyone's like comfortable that he's going to be healthy to start the season.
I was going to say it seems like every player's ahead of schedule following an injury, so we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. I don't think they spent that kind of money though without a good idea that he's going to play.
No, but I think he has experience. Not to go on another tangent, but I think he has experience at the quarterback position, and I think he puts Miami in a pretty good position when you consider that they lost a generational talent in Cam Ward and a generational wide receiver room from last year. I think Carson Beck. I know I have my criticisms of him, but I do think he's a pretty solid option for this quarterback room and the talent in the wide receiver room, which may not be as good as last year, but they're still pretty damn good.
Yeah, there's talent there. There's definitely talent in the running back room too, which is and the offensive line, which is why if you have a good quarterback to shepherd the offense, it's got to be different than last year's. You can't have he just snap the ball to Cam Ward and he'll figure it out as the offense. You're gonna have to do a little bit better than that. So, but I expect us to run the ball and be a little bit less open offensively, just because we don't have the best quarterback in the country anymore. But he's certainly good enough to win you all of the games. I mean, he did it at Georgia, so I don't think there's that concern that he can't play on this level, or we've tripped over our feet quite a few times on quarterbacks, but he has proven in big time football, so that's a little bit of a shift. But he's never going to be Cam Ward, so people think he's going to do that. That's just not happening.
And that's unfair to put on him. And I'm not saying that you are. I'm just saying in general. But if Carson Beck forces us to run the football a little bit more, then I'm all for it. I thought we didn't utilize the running backs enough last year. We talked about it ad nauseum on the show, but I would love to see the running backs get a little bit more involved in the offense this year, and I think they will. Will.
Yep. There will be new running backs getting the call as we segue into talking about the combine invite. So these are the 10 players that Miami has at the combine. Cam Ward, obviously, Damian Martinez, Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, Sam Brown, Elijah Arroyo, Jalen Rivers, Tyler Barron, Kiko Mauinoa, and Andres Borgala. So first question to you, DJ. Who do you think needs a really big performance at the combine to boost their draft stock?
Mauinoa. I know he struggled at times last year, but I think if he has a really good combine, he could really boost his draft stock. I mean, you've seen, how the combine. I know people have their doubts about it, but it really has helped players in some situations. I mean, when you look at a guy like Restrepo, a lot of teams need a good slot receiver. Every team, whether they want to admit it or not, needs a good kicker. So Borregales would fit there.
I still don't know that he's going to get drafted though. Because
I don't know. I don't know if he's going to get drafted, but I do see him being signed to, a practice squad or
he'll get to camp and then he'll have to earn a job.
Then Cam,
Cam's the number one pick.
Is the best quarterback in the draft.
Cam should just refuse to. I don't even know what he's doing there, to be honest.
So
he doesn't need to go to the combine. But.
So I think Manoa could benefit the most.
Yeah, I think Damian Martinez, if he impressed a lot of people at the Senior Bowl. We're obviously huge fans of his. I think if he can lay down a good 40 time, or because at his size, everyone, we saw it too. He's really quick for his size. If he can put a number next to that, I think he can shoot up. I think he's going to get drafted anyway, but I think he can, maybe get a round or two higher.
And he's a good pass catcher, which I think
absolutely
really plays well in the NFL.
Yeah, but I think for his size, if he can run a good 40 time, that'll really help. I mean, Arroyo definitely impressed a lot of people at the Senior Bowl, as did Restrepo.
Yeah, Restrepo got a lot of buzz at the Senior Bowl.
I'm interested to see what happens with Tyler Barron. He was so good at the beginning of last year. I would have bet you he's a first day pick, and now, or the old parlay, it's not the first day, it's just the first round since they moved it off the weekend. But a top 3 round pick, and now it's hard to see him getting drafted. He hardly played, towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
But even against Iowa State on their winning drive, they put him in for one play. He missed the tackle, but he beat his blocker, got to the quarterback. He missed the tackle, but he pressured him. A handful of plays against Syracuse. He had a big sack in that game. Of course, they still drove down and scored anyway. But he did put him into 2nd and 19, and then they converted on the next play. So I still think he's got that innate pass rushing ability, and I'm curious what happens to him. I think he was pretty horribly misused here. And I think Jalen Rivers, I mean, it's the combine, right? So they're not really playing football. They're taking measurements. So, I guess how many reps he can do. I think he's definitely an NFL player.
Yeah.
The ones I'd worry about are, you mentioned Maui Noah. I don't know that anyone could watch his tape last year and be impressed by it. So
I didn't want to say that, but I was thinking the exact same thing.
I mean, I think I think all of these guys will get to camp, but making a team will be hard. And then, I kind of felt like Sam Brown should have come back to school. He's got talent, so he might stick somewhere. But he had a chance to be really heavily featured this year when he was kind of the odd man out with Horton, Restrepo, and Jacoby. And he was going to, have a pretty big opportunity to be a featured wide receiver this year. And I thought he could have used another year just to showcase his talent, because I think he does have it. So this might be a chance for him, though, to impress. He definitely needs to run a good 40 and, show up, which he has the ability to do. He's a fast player. So I think he's probably the one that probably was least able to show his abilities last year on the field. So maybe the combine becomes a little bit more important for him as well.
Yeah, I think the emergence of Isaiah Horton last year really kind of not put a damper on Sam Brown's season, but I think Horton's emergence really kind of, made him take a backseat, unfortunately. So if he has a good combine, I could definitely see where a team could pick him up, or he'll make it to a camp and be able to show what he could do. I mean, he has the speed, and he is an explosive playmaker, and that's what teams want at the wide receiver position now. So we'll see how things play out, but I'm very interested to see where Restrepo goes, and quite honestly, I am interested to see where Maui ends up and what team takes a flyer on him.
I think it'll probably be undrafted free agent, to be honest with him. I don't know that he'll get drafted.
No, I agree.
Just because the other thing for him, so he's in that this is ironic, but it hurts for them. He's the starting middle linebacker for multiple years here. Also the starting linebacker at Washington State. So he doesn't really play special teams, and that's
Yeah.
For a linebacker that's not going to be, a top 2 or 3 round pick, they're going to look heavily for them to contribute in special teams, and he just didn't have a chance to show that here. So again, I think he can get to camp, and maybe he's a cerebral player, so he can, maybe make a team or at least a practice squad. But I can't imagine, just hasn't had what he showed at starting middle linebacker to me wouldn't get him drafted. And then, the things that would get him drafted, like, I could plug this guy down special teams. He didn't have a chance to show because he's just, again, big difference between college and the pros is in college you have these huge rosters, so like your starters don't play special teams.
Yeah, and I'm not even being funny when I say this, and I'm not trying to be funny, but I'm curious if a team takes a chance on him, what do they see that we might have missed or we didn't see or whatever. So if a team does take a chance on him, I'd be very curious to see how they want to use him or how they evaluate him in practice, and maybe he'll be able to unlock something in the NFL that he couldn't at Miami. But I am curious to see how that all plays out, because I don't want to say he wasn't impressive, but he just didn't do enough, I think, last year.
I mean, look, we've talked about this pretty endlessly on this show. He underperformed heavily. He probably should not have been starting at the end of the year, if we're being blunt about it. But goes for the whole defense. That unit was so broken. Yeah. Like, Ruben Bain did not look like a draftable player last year, right? And he's one of the best players in the country. So I think it's just that defense was so bad, and he had to stand in the middle of it, that it's just you're going to notice him on every play, and it's 9 out of 10 times it's not a good play for the defense. So in a way, you get exposed just by proximity to the middle of the field.
Maybe having a more defined role in an NFL camp could help him.
And I don't know why he looked, in relation to 2 years ago, he looked slower and he did. And I don't know what that is, but he's also the same player that after the 2023 season, if you said, could he make the NFL? Say absolutely. And now it's kind of like, don't know. So maybe he did put down a lot of good film 2 years ago. So that might, get his foot in the door, and then it's what he does with that.
Yeah, and I think, maybe an NFL scheme with an NFL defensive coordinator or something like that, he'll be able to understand his role a little bit more. The roles will be clearly defined, because that's the other thing. There were times last year, and this wasn't just a Mawanoa thing, it was a personnel thing. Multiple players on the field did not know what their roles were or what they had to do. So that obviously kind of accentuates and puts a glare on players who don't know what they're doing, and it makes everybody look bad. So I think
for sure. We mentioned that earlier with they send someone in motion, and half the team's pointing at each other, and no one knows where to line up. It's it's one of those. The team was confused, and again, he's standing in the middle of it. So
we'll see. I think it's a good group to go overall, and I am.
It is actually. I'm looking at the. We haven't had this strong of a draft class in a while. Obviously, Cam in there is potentially the number 1 overall pick is a big boost, but even behind him, with Martinez, I think Martinez, Restrepo, and Arroyo for sure get drafted. I mean, we haven't had. It's been waiting until like the 5th, 6th rounds for our first guys to come off the board the last few years. So this is nice.
I would love to see my Patriots grab Restrepo or another one of those slot receivers, because I think he's just so explosive and so quick. He can make things happen after the catch. He's got great hands, and slot receivers are an extremely important part of the offense. And whoever lands Restrepo will be absolutely lucky to land them. He'll be a great asset, and he's a very smart football player, and I think that helps him too.
Yeah, and I think Arroyo is going to be a beast.
Tight end, of course he's going to be a beast.
I mean, I left the door open, but you went receiver, so I'll go tight end.
Well, I wasn't trying to. I was trying to stray away from the tight end love, but Arroyo, I think, he really, really was able to elevate his game over the course of the last couple seasons. And when you look at the role of the tight end position now, it used to be way like 2010. It used to be like blocking and run game. Now it's all about, making things happen after the catch, being an asset in the passing game. And Arroyo will be a great asset to whoever lands him. Arroyo to the Patriots? I mean, maybe, because Hunter Henry is in his upper 30s, and Austin Hooper is on a 1-year deal as an unrestricted free agent. So potentially, I mean, they do need tight end depth. So possibly, yeah.
Yeah,
The Patriots need everything.
Yeah, I'm curious what round Arroyo will go in. He's a little bit of a wild card because I think he's going to combine really well.
Yeah.
He's a lot faster than people realize, and he's at the tight end position. And we actually talked about how Sam Brown got crowded out this year. It's because Horton, Restrepo, Jacoby, and Arroyo are going to be on the field a lot, and that's your 4. And then Martinez, who's also on this list. So there's your 5 skill players on a given play. So yeah, I know for sure.
Yeah, and I think
Kane here's making some predictions for Restrepo in the 3rd round. Arroyo late 1st or early 2nd. Also, shout out to Terrence and Matthew. Thanks for the
thanks.
We're
trying. We're trying.
Thanks for the regard. Yeah, so we'll see. I think the combine's important for everyone but Cam.
And I don't think Arroyo, late 1st or early 2nd isn't, that's not a wild prediction because this isn't a good tight end draft. So if you're one of those tight ends who's maybe not in, a tier 1 tight end, but a tier 2 tight end, this is a draft for you. So I could actually see that happening.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I think his talent, it just takes one GM to think, hey, I got a future all-pro here. Put him in the right offense, and that becomes value. Then we start getting late 1st, early 2nd.
Absolutely. But I think all of the guys that we mentioned are going to have pro careers that are going to be worth following. Even Mawanoa, if he can latch on.
I think some of these are a little bit more wild cardy to me. Boreas, you never know what happens with the kickers. I mean, his brother did miss a kick at Miami and didn't really catch on, right? Tyler Barron, very big wild card. I think he's got more talent than he had performance here because I put a lot on the coaches. Jalen Rivers, we haven't really talked about. He's another kind of wild card. I think some of these guys you could see playing for a long time. Though we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at a guy like Arroyo, for example, I could see him playing for a long time. Restrepo, I could see just because of the type of receiver he plays.
And I have no doubt that Restrepo is going to carve out a pretty, like a solid NFL career. That's he'll be around a long time, and obviously Cam.
Yeah,
Cam's got sky's the limit for Cam.
Cam is the crown jewel, I think, of the entire draft, if we're being honest. And
he should be the number 1 overall pick.
I just hope he gets drafted into a good situation because the teams at the top aren't necessarily.
I mean, that's always the case, right? The bad teams get the better picks. So,
yeah, to some degree, yeah. I mean, there are better situations than others, but hopefully Cam can get playmakers around him wherever he goes.
Yeah, I think he is the playmaker, though. So I think he'll be fine wherever.
Yeah.
All right, pivoting a little bit of news last week after our show, the ACC. For those that aren't aware, ESPN had an option to pick up the ACC contract through 2036, which they exercised, which they were always going to because they didn't. Then the ACC would be able to go get another TV contract, which would have been exponentially higher than what they're currently getting paid. So ESPN basically had an option to get a deal on content for the next 10 years, and they exercised it. Now, what that means is, so there's a couple of things, though, around that. With that now locked in, the ACC is apparently going to move into a little bit more of. So this year they introduced the performance-based revenue sharing. They're also going to apparently introduce some brand revenue sharing, which, the bigger brand names that tend to bring in more money overall to the conference get more of the revenue, which means, teams like Miami, Clemson, Florida State, and North Carolina will get more money payout than, than Wake Forest, for example.
Yeah.
I feel like Boston College has a little bit better branding because it's in a big city and it brings a market with it.
That is true.
But they're kind of more in the middle, I would
Yeah.
say. But I mean, they're paying for football and they're paying for Miami, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina. I mean, that's where the money is. Because even though Duke is amazing at basketball doesn't pay the bills. Football does.
Right.
So and so that's a pretty big shift for the ACC. But what that also does is mean that the top ACC teams, if they perform well, would be making very similar money to the Big Ten SEC teams. So that's a pretty big shift. And I think the reason the brand shift is key is because they already did the performance base, which gives some extra money. But what that also means is that certain schools in Tallahassee, when they win 2 games, they don't get that money. So after complaining and suing the ACC, saying they can't make money because it's all going to schools that don't earn it, they won 2 games, and so in the first year of the performance-based payouts, they're not going to get anything for that. So for being the worst team in the conference. So what the brand does is it locks it in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you stink, you still get your brand payment. So basically it's a way for the top schools to always get more money, even if they're not performing, which is big for, frankly, those schools, because that's what they would get out of the SEC or the Big Ten, which they can now get out of the ACC. And the reason the other schools agreed to it is, if those schools are able to implode the conference, those other schools are much more likely to end up like Oregon State and Washington State than Cal and Stanford ended up getting saved by the ACC at the 11th hour.
I still forget they're in the ACC, to be honest with you. I have to double check sometimes just to make sure I'm reading it correctly.
Yeah, and just for context on how much of a drop off that is. So Cal and Stanford agreed to, I think they get 33% payouts for the first 5 years, and SMU came for free. They don't get paid. Just because there's such a big jump between being in a power conference and not. So, if you're sitting there and you're Wake Forest or you're, a school that thinks if there's a shuffle, I might get left out, you'll gladly give a percentage away. It's still significantly more money than you get paid if the thing implodes and there's nowhere for you to go. So, it's worth the stability for them as well. Again, so they don't end up in a situation like Oregon State and Washington State did, where they lost a ton of money. So anyway, that's an update on that. DJ, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. Are they quaking their boots in Big Ten country now that was a joke?
Well, I do think, honestly, that they're quaking their boots in SEC country, because the amount of crying that I saw this year because the SEC didn't win the national championship and Alabama got left out, blah, 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 blah. Like, I think the Big Ten, they represented the conference well. I think the ACC did well this year, but to me, I just love sticking into the SEC because for so long they always held this competitive advantage backed by their money trees, and now the gap is closing. And so I like the fact that monetary gap is closing, because let's be honest here. I mean, money was a big reason why the SEC was so dominant for so long. Yes, good football, but also a lot of cash being thrown around. And so
it was a few programs primarily too.
Right, yeah. Alabama, for example, and then Nick Saban goes crying on national television about how this is all unfair and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I think the more college football closes the gap between the SEC and all the other conferences, the better. I mean, we've seen it, 2 back-to-back national champions in the Big Ten, and, the ACC had a strong year overall football-wise in the conference itself. So, I like this performance-based payout. I think it'll help the top schools, and it will continue to kind of level out the playing field overall.
Yeah, and the gap is already closed just because, you can legally pay players now. So schools that were under the table Alabama paying players. Now with it out in the open, like you don't have that advantage of essentially having a professional money laundering scheme out of your athletic department that was very difficult for everyone else to compete with. So that is what it's
back in the day too.
Yeah. And so now when they lose that advantage, I mean, look, it just narrows the gaps, and so there isn't much to separate these conferences at this point, even though people want to pretend like there is. So. There's haves and have-nots, but they're not split by conference. They're split by program.
Right. And I'll just say this because I always like to say this. It's time to stop pretending that this is all about academics now, because there are still a faction of people that want to think, oh, what about the academics? Blah, blah, blah. This is not about academics. This is now a business. And the sooner people adjust to that, and the sooner certain coaches adjust to that, the better. Because I know I'm supposed to say, oh, it's all about college and the books and blah, blah, blah. But now it's a big time business. And this is just another, kind of step towards, just more money pouring in. You got NIL, you got transfer portal. It's now a full-time business that is completely separate from academics, whether people want to admit it or not.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's always been the case, but they're losing the ability to lie to themselves.
The NCAA, out of all the organizations, is trying to, put Pandora's box back in when everything's been let out. So, having the NCAA kind of monitor this and stuff like that, it's going about as well as we all thought it would. So there's also that.
Yeah, and still more to come on that front with the revenue sharing, which they've negotiated with Congress, which is completely illegal. So we'll see more to come on that. You can't negotiate without your employees' input, so you can't just decide that you're going to cap their salaries or do any of that stuff.
They don't care.
Oh, I know, but it's illegal.
Just saying.
But it's stuff like that they keep losing in court. That's why.
Right. It's just more of a reason that the NCAA is just so incompetent and way in over their heads.
No, for sure. But they have no legal authority. Period. That's why they end up in these situations. All right. Shifting to our final topic. A lot of visitors on campus, DJ. What are your thoughts on, recruiting never stops? So we're now talking unbelievably about the 2026 class. So, time is zipping past. Your thoughts on anyone interested you from the recent visitors here?
Well, I had to say something really quick, and I know you're probably tired of me saying things, but the National Signing Day show is National Signing Day is this Wednesday. And it seems like with early signing day now.
It's so gone now. I didn't even realize.
Yeah, National Signing Day is this Wednesday because I just was reading 24/7 Sports has a show from 1 to 5. And it's been taken over by early signing day. And I didn't even realize it was this Wednesday until I just saw that.
Yeah, certainly that's taken over. But it's also, with the ease of transferring, it just feels like, okay, step one is they committed to school X, but, give it a year and we'll see if they're still, I think everything is just a lot less attention here. But
I remember watching on ESPN when all the faxes would come in. And
you'd wake up first thing in the morning and just feel like, because that time was official. And now it's just like, they signed in December. So.
Now they signed in December. They might stay their freshman year, and then they're off to another program. But anyway.
So I should know the answer to this, but I didn't look. And is there anyone the Canes are looking at on Wednesday, or?
Not that.
I don't think so. I think they just went early signing day, and now they're looking at 26. Is what appears.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. That with this February signing day coming up on Wednesday, it's not about are there any big guys coming. It's who's left that we need to pick up to fill out the rest of our class. And I think the Canes have done a good job of doing that via the early signing period. And but they did have visitors over the past couple of days, and two kind of caught my eye in particular. 2026 running back Jay Lamar from Moultrie, Georgia. He's the 13th overall running back in his class and the 17th overall player in his class from the state of Georgia. He's got offers from Miami, from Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, Florida. So he's got a long offer sheet, and he's extremely talented. He's extremely fast. He measures in at 6 feet, 205 pounds. He's got a good burst. As soon as he gets the ball, he can break tackles. He's also a physical running back. So he kind of stood out to me because over the last couple classes, Miami has done a good job of stockpiling explosive running back talent, and getting a guy like Lamar would certainly add to that. He's very shifty as well. He's an east-west runner too, so he's not just a north-south straight-ahead runner. And so he stood out to me. And then another guy that came to visit was Florida commit Jalen Waters. He committed to the Gators on June 15th of last year. He had offers from Auburn, Colorado, Florida. He's the 14th overall corner in the 24/7 Sports composite rankings and the 30th overall player in the state of Florida. He also had an offer from Florida State, so he was heavily sought after. He has had a couple offers over the past couple of weeks, including from Vish's second favorite school, Missouri. So there are SEC teams that are interested in him. In addition to Florida, he's set to take an official visit to Florida in May, but the fact that Miami got him on campus is certainly big. You can tell that they're making the corner position a point of emphasis, even just with these transfer portal pickups. So they recognize that corner depth is going to be not a problem, but an area that they really want to focus on. So he's a guy that I would watch out for as well and see where that recruitment goes.
Yeah, no, those are good names to watch. Especially, I feel like you can never have enough running backs. So yeah, because they get hurt, they transfer. So it feels like the room is never full. So
yeah, that's the thing. 1 or 2 injuries in that running back room becomes incredibly thin.
Yeah, and I think we're all expecting the Canes to run the ball a lot more going forward when there's a non-Cam Ward playing quarterback. So
I hope so anyway. I hope they run the ball more.
I mean, they've got to run the ball more. They have to. God, I'm having nightmares of the bowl game now.
Yeah, no, me too.
Run it all the way to the goal line and throw it. The Syracuse game, just had to keep running, force the pass.
Yep, no, because Syracuse's defense was Swiss cheese. Not that ours was, the 85 Bears, but Syracuse definitely had some holes in their defense, and we did not exploit them enough. Damn. Yeah.
Oh, that Syracuse game is one of those ones that we'll never get over.
Honestly, that Wake Forest game was one for me that I never get over because, again, just watching Hayes King bulldoze up the middle.
That's Georgia Tech. I was like, what happened against Wake? I mean, played like crap for most of the game against Wake Forest, then pulled away the fourth. But
Georgia, yeah, that's right.
Georgia Tech was the one that.
Georgia Tech
bulldozed the defense.
Bulldozed the defense, and it wasn't the running back who was also really good, if I remember correctly.
They have some players. I mean, they were a better team than we thought going in, but that any kind of defensive resistance in that game would have been a win, but there was nothing.
Well, under Heffernan, there will be defensive resistance. Hopefully, crossing my fingers.
Yeah,
and, I do like the makeup of this secondary, and I'll be curious to see what Heffernan can get out of the defensive line. And if they can really step up, because if they have another bad year, that's very concerning. Very concerning.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is Mario's third defensive coordinator, so I don't know that you necessarily get to name a fourth. So they need to get this defense right. This is year 4 for him. It's a big year for him.
So, what would be a successful year in your eyes this season for Mario Cristobal?
They need to win the conference.
Playoffs?
Well, I mean, you'd make the playoffs.
You win the conference, make the playoffs.
Yeah. They need to win the ACC.
And would anything less than that at this point be considered a failure? Yeah, I'm not calling for him to be fired, but
it would be an underachievement and a disappointment. Like failure is probably a stronger word.
Yeah.
Like especially if they do something like lose the ACC championship game, it's hard to call that a failure.
Yeah.
But they need to be in Charlotte. They've out-recruited. If you look at the recruiting rankings and the transfer portal rankings, they're by far the highest in the ACC over the last 3 or 4 years. That's got to pay off on the field. You can't show up with that much more talent than your opponents.
And to be clear, I'm not calling for him to be fired at all. I just wonder. You mentioned multiple coordinators pretty much every season, and a lot of change, and it's hard to get cohesiveness and consistency with a lot of change. So I'm just wondering. I do think this is a big year for Mario.
Yeah, but you have forward momentum, right? And this is like where it either continues forward, which means then you build to the national championship level, or it snap back. He can't afford to snap back. He needs to keep going forward. So last year was a 3-loss team. They need to be better.
Yeah, and I think we will have forward momentum in terms of having a successful year. I'm not sure if it's going to be as good as last year, but we'll see. I mean, Carson Beck obviously is a fantastic quarterback, and the defense should be much better. But again, it's a new system defensively. A new coordinator, new coaches. So we'll see. But I do wonder, with the amount of different coaching personnel that we've had, how much longer it can go on like this.
Yeah, no, I think he's got to win with the staff now. I don't think he's going to get to roll the dice again. Although I think it would. I mean, if the defense is a disaster next year, I mean, I can't. I think it would. I mean, I don't know what it would take for Mario to actually lose his job after next year. I think it's basically impossible. So, I think it would take 2 bad years in a row. So, who knows? But no. But this hire was not one of those check the boxes. This was a hire, go get a big time defensive coordinator to right the ship. So, this is not a 1-year deal for him either. So.
Yeah. And, I think when you take a look at the staff, I feel like it's very well put together. I do feel like it's very well put together, and I do think it may not be names that everybody's heard of, but I do think
it's been upgraded, right, from last year. Like, I'm not just talking about the fact that like the defense was dog shit. I mean, just the previous guy we got from Marshall, now we got some from Minnesota. So we went from I think MAC is what Marshall's into the Big Ten. You go to a power school and you poach their coordinator. That's a big time move, and it's if you keep up with all the conference realignment, we pulled a defensive backs coach from the Big 12. So that's what Houston is. So these are more powerful moves to like, okay, we're gonna go with someone that's proven it on this level because we're not gonna screw around with this anymore.
And not for nothing, but Minnesota's defensive line coach is expected to be the Arizona Cardinals' next defensive line coach. So he left to go upgrade there too. And I think that speaks to the coaching tree that PJ Fleck has, grown and brought to the table. So I do think that Heffernan was a solid hire because I do think that Minnesota does a good job of producing coaches and, developing them as well.
Yep. Well, we'll see how it shows up on the field, DJ.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we've done shows like this before. I've sat here like this before, probably 2 years ago, and I've said all these same things. So feels like Groundhog Day, but maybe we'll be right this time around.
Yeah, I will say, like, if you look at Mario's tenure here, it's gotten better every year. Yeah. And if he keeps that going forward, they're in for a big year. If he doesn't, then all the questions get asked.
Yeah, as they should.
Yeah, as they should. Exactly. 4 years is plenty of time to
especially in today's era.
Yeah, and 4 years is plenty of time for us to not be talking about projects and building anymore. Like, the building needs to be built.
Yep, I agree. I totally agree.
Anyway, we'll have several months to talk about this before they open against Notre Dame. But DJ, thanks for holding the fort down with me on.
Of course, thank you.
Monday. We'll be.
I had a good time.
Oh, actually, some network announcements. Buckets Wednesday night. I think it'll be Melissa and I on for that, and then Jazz and I will be out at the Hurricanes team store on Saturday morning, 11 a.m. Stop by. We're gonna do our baseball show previewing the season, which starts in 10 days.
I can't believe it.
They will be out there on February 14th, 11 days, opening up the season at the Light. So we're going to do our season preview next week, and that'll kick off our rounds of weekly shows as we get Canes on Deck back up for season 2 of that. So yeah, stay tuned to the network. We got all that Canes coverage coming up over the next few days.
Feels crazy as I'm drowning in snow here in the Northeast, but yeah, you're right. 10 days, 11 days.
It is quite hot down here in Miami. So it is yeah.
You guys got snow too. Maybe not you guys specifically, but Florida did.
So. Very northern Florida. Miami is very much a cold front. The cold front did reach down here and it got into the 50s. So
the cold front got into the 50s.
Yeah, but that was weeks ago. It's back up into the lows in the 70s, highs in the 80s.
A cold front. That's a spring day for me.
I mean, it was boiling yesterday. So. Totally different dynamic. So yeah, baseball's upon us.
Can't wait.
All right. Well, again, thanks, GJ, for hanging out with me. Thanks, everyone, for watching. If you're on the podcast, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. Same time and place.
Go Canes.
Go Canes.
The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rings Kane Show. You know.